Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are about to do an unusual behind the scenes here, in a sense. So for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Meg Bulger, who has worked with us for more than a year, 2 years. I mean, COVID time, like it might have been a year before
going on 2
COVID.
years, which is
Yeah,
so
exactly.
exciting.
And among advising us on our communications, she's also helped us put together This Is Not Advice. And before that, Meg, you were the comms person at New Relic before,
Yeah.
during, through IPO, worked with startups, including like in the agency world, including, I can't believe we didn't run into each other when you were doing stuff like broadly in the gaming/social world. And one of the particular areas where Meg has a feel is how leaders communicate internally to their own people. So the question today, Meg, is how do I do great internal communication?
You bet. So I have so many thoughts on this. But what I'll start with is so many people, myself included, are passionate about how do I tell my story externally? How do I get that headline? How do I get the world to know about me? How do I get that prospective customer to know about me and what I stand for and my product updates and my people and how great I am? And what I've seen time and time again is you really have to take seriously your internal communications, because if your team is not knowledgeable and excited and on board with what you're doing, then good luck getting it to land externally.
And so what's some of the stuff? So like, I think like most CEOs or even like a team leader who's like, I'll communicate within my team so it could be understood externally. They're like, but I do that. Like, that's what I do. I tell them our messages. And so what are the things you look for that are like the real markers, or where have you seen an example of something where you did, with us or with New Relic, where it's like, no, that's the way?
Yeah. I think that when you're the lead on a project, a launch, a team, a moment that you want to be known, it's different, right? Depending on the size of your company and all those things. But
I mean, for example, like one of my thoughts on this is you get to a certain size where actually external communication becomes internal, because the most efficient way to get people within your company to see something is to say it in public. And so like Elon, I don't think Elon does a whole lot of I don't really know. Like, obviously some of his internal emails have come out, but it's like, you want folks at Tesla to know something. If Elon tweets it, I bet they'll pay attention,
Right. So the way I like to think about it is thinking about those internal tools. So, for us and for many startups, it's using Slack to just check in with the team to get your message out. But it's really going to, what is the message? What is the headline that I want to be known? And then kind of pulling on those different levers. So if you're getting ready for a big, exciting launch, make sure you loop in the right teams ahead of time. It sounds so obvious, but I think so many teams are so heads down and making sure the thing is ready to ship that they oftentimes don't do that internal work. Or they're like, I talked to enough people. You need to talk to more people. They
consider it optional. Yeah, and I think what's interesting is we have been taught to treat a corporation, legally speaking even, as a person, right? So people think, oh, they're on the team, therefore, like in the same way that like my hand is not like something I treat differently than my face, it's like it should all just work. But really, we're all just individuals. And, like one of the things that reminded me of this is Angry Retail Guy on TikTok, who, it's like he's an employee at retail of a company, but obviously does not toe any of the party line on anything, because there's no reason to assume that just because somebody works for the company and that they will. And as a CEO, it's just easy to forget that you have to do the work to convince people internally that it's real and authentic and legit and exciting and fun and good.
Yeah. And so I think it's about taking your messages. I mean, from a practical standpoint, this is what it looks like for a comms team. And sometimes for companies that don't have comms teams yet, you can do this too.
Yeah, you have to do this yourself.
It's like getting the doc going, and it's talking about the key messages, and it's thinking through, like, are our employees paying attention to Slack? Do they have this like internal wiki thing? Like, where are they getting their information?
Totally. Sometimes you got to post it to blind if you want the employees to pay attention.
Totally. And it's making sure you take those steps just as you would write an investor email or think about your customers, like that you have all those stakeholders. Guess what? Your internal crew is so important, and you need to reach them where they are. And the other thing I'll say is, so you communicate to them, you push this thing at them, you let them know they're happening. Is there a feedback loop? Is there some way that they can provide input? So for example, they can go out on launch day, if that's what we're working toward, and they can be really proud and share something with their networks that they're sort of on board with. Because guess what? If they're not on board and they're just being sent this like template thing, they're not going to share it with their networks. And it's extremely powerful. I mean, as a member of this former company and various companies I've worked with, like, I get more excited about some of the things my former colleagues post than all the news I read all day. You know, there's just that extra trust there. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
100%. I love that. And so if like, that seems like a great general principle. If you are like talking to the head of a team or somebody who just joined a team as its leader, and you're like, okay, here's one thing. Is there a one thing? Like a tip of something to get started with? Something that like is surprisingly useful that people don't do that often or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's write the headline that you want the company to know. Like you will be kicking yourself if the people on your team, like broadly at your company, externally, don't hear from you at the end of this. Again, I use launch because it's just
just a moment. You just made a moment where something is happening.
But I think that I've been in that position. I know others have, where you walk away after the launch and you're like, oh, I didn't get that one thing out, or I didn't reach that one group. Do the work. Think about your headline. Think about what you want to leave people with.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes I'll just say for myself, one of the ways that I think of which constituencies to include, and of course we all have the forehead slap moment of like, how did I not think of them? Clearly. I have relatively few of them. And one of the things is I kind of imagine my future self thinking, who did I regret not reaching out to? And like the practice of being in that empathy place, you then are like, oh, you know, and also partially it's like years of making mistakes and realizing like, how did I forget to include legal?
Yes, I love that. And yes, I practice the same thing. And I think that it works. And I think that so often when we're in launch mode or comms mode, we're thinking about what could go wrong, or, you know, we're all the boxes to check. I have to check in with legal, and you have to do all those things. But when you come from the human place of how are people going to feel?
Who's going to be mad at me?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, you know what? I don't care. Like, yeah, they can be mad, but I just don't have time. And sometimes, you know, things just happen, but we try our best. And that is what we're doing here. We're not giving advice. We are trying our best, sharing our stories with others. And thank you, Meg, for doing this. And this goes without saying, but since you control the editorial calendar here, you
finally got me on this thing. I've been hiding behind.
I know. It's funny. Everybody works on this. Meg knows this, but just for everybody works on this. I'm like, hey, and you should come on. And yeah. And then eventually it's sort of like I need to increase the pressure of the arm twist until eventually like, no, that's going to get too painful. And they come on. So here we are. And if you have questions for us or Meg or a guest you want us to have, find us on the internet.